Hey, what's up? It's the Critical Plug, and I got for you an album review of the new Jessie Ware album, Superbloom. This is the seventh studio album from singer, songwriter, pop star Jessie Ware, returning with what appears to be the final installment of her vintage disco trilogy, which to my surprise I did not expect due to the fact that I didn't know we were in the middle of a trilogy. Whereas in the beginning, and I mean as in the beginning of the decade, we were hit with the fantastic disco, synth funk, house, soul extravaganza, What's Your Pleasure, which was a banger of a record, following that up with another banger of a record, That Feels Good, which honestly, not as great as What's Your Pleasure, but still a great LP nonetheless. And to differentiate with that one, I would say she definitely added more soul to that one, more Philly soul, but you still got your disco bangers on that thing. And she has really gained a knack for bringing back the vintage style. And again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, it's not like she's trying to copy a 70s style vintage album from the past. No, again, like this really sounds like somebody from that era putting together a very ambitious, a very well thought out, a very provocative, a very anthemic and banger of a record from that era. Just a great one. I'll also say too that like her singing, her songwriting has improved massively since her earlier records. And before this record, we had That Feels Good, where sexually there was a correlation with the title, but with this title, I don't necessarily see any correlation to sex. However, I do feel like it could possibly be the development stage. I'm not exactly sure. But while the title doesn't exactly correlate to the previous LPs, the sound definitely does. Because sonically, it fits perfectly, with this LP being at 13 tracks, 42 minutes. I also want to add how well-rounded this album is, and certainly lyrically, sonically, covers a lot of bases that should be covered for this era. Because you're getting no shortage of punch, you're getting no shortage of 70s essence, no shortage of anthems on this thing. However, this time around, you're certainly getting more of a majestic feel here, a majestic 70s soul feel. And this LP doesn't skimp on the sexiness, doesn't skimp on the sex. Not to mention, to differentiate from the other LPs, the very gorgeous musicianship that lands on here, which becomes very apparent on the opening interlude, following that up with I Could Get Used to This, which has these hot, sexy, and breathy vocals that just float through the mix. Soaring harmonies, beautiful jazz woodwinds occasionally coloring the track, with some nice bass slaps working very well in tandem with the snares and kicks. It just sounds lively, majestic in the moment, along with its flirty and sassy melodies. Not only that, but the insatiable soaring vocals that leave this thing sounding like a sexy vintage disco fairy tale, where the protagonist has this fairy godmother who is just granting their every sexual desire and wish and letting them explore what else is out for them, what sexual varieties await them. The following track, which is the title track, which is definitely one of the most soulful tracks here, with its very nimble bass line, slight hand percussions, certainly very Marvin Gaye coded, which honestly is way more orchestral, way more symphonic than what she's ever done. And you know how much I loved her previous releases, but man, the larger-than-life group vocals, the sexy hot horn hits, and I believe to be hand claps, it just sounds so raw, organic, but at the same time, so cinematic, so dramatic, so theatrical, and lyrically at the same time, poetically sensual, along with a very cheeky sexual breakdown. Super, super. Super, super. Like, there's so many captivating parts of this track and just overall intoxicating. And the following track, Automatic, while the hook is very catchy and I do like the bright horn shots, this could have been a highlight for me, but unfortunately I think this ends a little bit too prematurely. It starts off as a banger of a track, but then just ends as it just takes us on this interlude detour. But the following track, Sauna, completely different story. But giving us a super synth-funk disco rager. Very punchy beat, probably the most very synth-driven track here, with a super bright bridge that breaks into this explosive soaring chorus over these bright synth embellishments. And the following track, which is honestly my favorite track on the LP, and definitely a contender with anything off of What's Your Pleasure, Mr. Valentine, where this is probably going to be my summer anthem for sure. This is probably the most post-punk Jessie Ware has ever gone before, with its super thick bass melody that I would definitely expect from an ESG record, with these quirky key and guitar embellishments that sound like something off a Talking Heads record, or maybe a No Wave record, with an insanely catchy refrain, Mr. Valentine, Mr. Valentine, oh, 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 goes into this absolutely heavy, gargantuan, soaring chorus. Like, the whole thing to me just sounds like this sexual vintage montage. It's so nocturnal, but goes straight into heavenly. And the outro is super whacked out with delay and laser-like synths. It's cinematic, it's uplifting, it's chaotically horny. As with the foreplay and the build-up of the track, it brings you to this voyage of a satisfying experience. Not only that, but sequentially, the syncopation of the production, of the melodies, of the grooves, just make this thing just absolutely killer. And as great as the production was for this track, unfortunately, I cannot say the same for the following track, which is Love For You, which is way more of an authentic issue, mostly with the mixing. The hook is really catchy and could have been a highlight, but the vocal highs on this just sound way too touched up, way too pitched to the max. It sounds almost like, oh, don't you say it. Don't you say it. I'm warning you. I don't think you have a say in this matter.
Phew. For a second there, I thought you were gonna say AI.
Aha! You said it, you idiot! Now you have to go to your home planet for all eternity.
Oh no! No! No!
That's it? He's gone? That's all I had to do? After all this time? After all this?
Hey, you got a lot of unopened bills down there.
Anyway, they just sound really unflattering and inauthentic in my opinion. But right after that, the heat kicks up with one of the singles that led up to this album, Ride, where Jessie Ware and her collaborators bring together this disco, synth-funk, spacey, cowboy odyssey, which does a bright vintage interpolation of the classic Morricone score to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, with these roaring group vocals. Production-wise, I am definitely picking up on some New Order, Daft Punk. It sounds New Order adjacent if we're talking about the groove of this thing, the strings of this thing. But with the ascending strings, the intergalactic feel, it really does give it an identity of its own. But it does sound like something Summer would sing on if we're talking about the pumping synth bass, the sequence drums and hi-hats that very much read as Blue Monday. And definitely something that should be in the rotation of every club, every party going on this summer. And really does show how Jessie Ware deserves a spot at the table with the rest of the greats in this lane. Following track, Don't You Know Who I Am, which is a irresistible disco soul banger that does have an interpolation. However, we're talking about Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive, with its big, gorgeous string sections, absolutely decadent falsetto vocal runs, the twinkling keys and melodic refrains that dance on top of the pulsing beat. It's just incredible, not to mention how commanding she sounds on this track. Like, they just have so much desire, so much passion, the intensity, the yearning, the command, like, come over here, don't you know I'm the love of your life? But after that, things cool down with the beautiful, heart-wrenching piano ballad 16 Summers, which is honestly the most stripped-back song here, about experiencing the joys of motherhood, embracing the moments in time you have with your kids, realizing that time's going by, but simultaneously cherishing every moment, how fast they're growing, counting the 16 summers, and the 16 summers being the growth of the children, and seeing them grow up, live their own lives. It's the most beautiful, soul-crushing, and honestly the saddest song that Jessie has probably ever penned, and really does go to show the range, how she could just give you these absolute bangers, bops, anthems, but also something deeply moving. Following that, we have No Consequences. Not one of the strongest tracks here, but I do think it has a little bit of a build. But the closer, though, is amazing. Huge fat bass, elegant string variations, large cathedral-like vocals with these ghostly chanting leads that hang in the background, with pumping keys, twittering metallics, mixed with sung and spoken word vocals, with a super sassy, get right to it refrain, wasting no time, very instantaneous, like, let's save the talking for tomorrow. Let's get to it now. Making every sexual, making every passionate moment just count, just savoring every moment, seizing it all. And with this being the final track, I would definitely say this is definitely one hell of a way to end it. So overall, I think Jessie does it again, delivering the most ambitious album of her career so far. Not taking anything away from What's Your Pleasure. That is an excellent album, my favorite album from her. However, I will say on this, she definitely explored more territory here. The only issue I have with this thing is a bit of the inconsistencies. I do feel there are more lows on this album than What's Your Pleasure, but not by much. Not by much at all. Like sonically, stylistically, she explored a lot of avenues. I do feel like they did pay off. And the amounts of highlights on this thing just make for an excellent third installment to this extravagant trilogy. And I can honestly say the highlights definitely ratio the weaker moments here. And thematically, lyrically, this is the more personal she's ever gotten. Not only showing you what's in store for the bedroom, for the dance floor, but also what's in her heart. And she has just done it in the most thrilling, engaging, excellent, and profound way. I'm feeling a 4 out of 5 black hearts on this album. If you've given this a listen, what did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And that's it. I am your plug. Hit me with a sub. Show me love. It's my opinion. If you hate it, your view is still a dub. Critical plug. Jessie Ware. Superbloom. Till we meet again.